Given these issues, there are several ways to mitigate the issues of gridlock and accountability. So two of the most common ones are to tinker with issues of voting and control, and to plan aggressively at the outset for inevitable disputes and deadlock. So let's first talk about issues of relating to voting and control. So even though 50-50 ownership has intuitive appeal, it comes with these gridlock issues. So parties might be able to mitigate these issues by going for a split of, say, 51 and 49. In these cases, the actual management might actually still be pretty even though it's 51 and 49. So for instance, the person with the 49% position can actually write into the contract that it still wants to control certain things that it cares about, or it can be given particular things like serving on particular committees that, it's allowed to have a bigger say. It can also do things like second folks from the main company into the venture. It can negotiate for contractual right to control various key product development committees, or it can negotiate to provide certain services to the JV that it really cares about being done in a particular way. Another important mitigation mechanism is to think in advance about the ways to break up this deadlock, which we'll talk about more later in the day as well, especially around topics where parties are potentially going to have significant divergence in risk appetite, strategy, or interest. So a recent study found that 80% of JV agreements contained only really basic dispute resolution mechanisms. For instance, if we don't agree, we will pass it up the chain to our parent companies. As you might expect, especially with interdependent JVs, passing it up the chain just means that there will be deadlock between the companies directly rather than within the JV itself. Some agreements, however, provide some more robust dispute resolution mechanisms to break up deadlocks. So for instance, about half of all JV agreements provide a path toward arbitration for disputes. A smaller percentage also provide for a path toward non-binding mediation of disputes. Obviously, when the parties can't agree over the long term, the necessary solution is often termination of the venture or allowing one of the parties to exit. Relatively few JV agreements, only about a quarter, have provisions that talk specifically about partner buyout or dissolution of the venture in the event of deadlock. But this is an important point to consider. Some JV partners are also able to anticipate what their points of friction are going to be, so they can figure out creative solutions for those problems. I'll just talk about a couple of the common ones here. So I really like the golden share idea, in part because it's called golden share. So it just really reminds me of Willy Wonka's golden ticket. So for certain decisions, one party can be given the ability to cast that deciding vote. So for instance, if one party is contributing technical expertise and the other is contributing capital, the partner with more technical expertise might be allowed contractually to cast the deciding vote on issues with more technical expertise needed. A variation on this is that if there are issues of deadlock, the deciding vote can be given to the two partners in turn. So this vote is the tie-breaking vote goes to A, and then the next one, the tie-breaking vote goes to B, and so forth. In a JV that's organized as its own separate entities, the partners can also do things like take turns appointing the CEO or the chairman of the board of the JV entity, and that person can guide the company during their term, basically casting deciding votes as disputes crop up. Another interesting variation here is to unlink the JV ownership from the voting rights. So this is actually more common than you think. So in the Miller Coors JV, for instance, that was set up as a 58-42 in terms of economic rights, but 50-50 in terms of voting rights. In a JV between ExxonMobil and Shell, that was economically split up as 52-48, but it also had 50-50 voting rights. On the flip side, there are also some really interesting splits out there. So a JV between Royal Dutch Shell and a company called Cosan was structured as multiple 50-50 JVs. So in some of the JVs, party A had 51% voting rights. In others, party B had 51% voting rights. So the result is that within each individual JV, there was a tiebreaker entity, right? So the person who had the entity that had 51% voting rights, but each one was also highly incentivized to take into account their partner's concerns, because in another related JV, the partner would have 51% voting rights.